Whom Gods Would Destroy, An Occult History of the First World War, by Tyler Kimball. 1. The Ring. It all began with college boys on holiday, the woman said. My grandfather was one of them. I asked for the time period. She said that it was the beginning of a long vacation of 1910, more certain than the versions of the story usually are. We don't even know the names of the men involved, just the initials. Her grandfather never told her the names of his accomplices. They were always R, T, H, and C. Her grandfather was W, and I promised that I would keep it that way. It's just an urban legend, after all. W wished the story had never gotten out. It mortified him. I mean, she said, choosing her words carefully, he always wondered if he helped start the war. The Cambridge Cabal, retroactively named after the spy ring of the 1930s, embodied the ruling class of the age. It was the last truly optimistic generation of Britain, boys confident in their abilities and the power of authority to make a difference in the world. These were proud citizens of an empire at the height of its power, entitled to rule the world due to the sophistication of its nature. They were privileged, they were invincible, and they were right about everything. W was a Cambridge student from 1906 to 1910, enrolled in King's College. While in his later days, W would even deny that it ever happened, he initially claimed that he, H, and R came across a strange man on the bridge of Sighs. The student took him for a simple swaying drunk at first, moving to avoid him. One of the boys, W was never consistent on whether it was R or H, brushed against the man's hand. A ring rolled off of the man's fingers. The man cried out in anguish and climbed the handhold of the bridge. W and H pulled the man down. R demanded to know if he was trying to break his own neck. The man shook and pleaded with them to help him find it. H told him that he would help if the man would stop crying. The man explained that the ring was the most important thing in the world to him. W asked what was he on about. H and R slowly retreated, just in case this drunk went mental. "The ring was cursed," the man said, "and now I'm going to hell." "Calm down," said W. "What do you mean, cursed?" "It was magic," the man said. "There was a spirit in there, a demon of some such. It granted me wishes, quietly and slowly. I was rich once. I was a squire. People respected me." "What happened then?" W asked. "I acted foolishly," the man said. "I spent the money faster than the wind could blow it my way. I gave away too much. I still find pounds in the cushions and in the pavement, but it's not enough now." "If you gave away all of your money, why do you think that you're going to hell?" W asked. "Don't bother him," R said. "The man thinks he's in some Arabian Nights Ali Baba story. He's cracked." "It doesn't matter. If you were the last wearer of the ring when you die, you go to hell," the man said. "It's the rules." "Whose rules?" "The ring's. I don't know who started it," the man shouted, flailing in frustration. "I need to find it." W shook his head. "What if I bought the ring, in absentia?" "I can't do that to you," shouted the man. "It doesn't matter. That's your soul floating down that little stream. I'll trade. How much?" The man bit down on his lip. His eyes glanced up. "Fine," he said. "The man who sold it to me told me the rules. You can't destroy it. You can't see it for more than you bought it for, or else it comes back. It always does." "How much did you pay for it?" said W. "A full pound," said the man. "But the last rule, if you die with it in your possession, you go to hell. Remember that." "Of course," said W. "Here's a shilling." And with that, the man heard a bony rattling sound, the clink of metal rolling across the bridge. The ring stopped at the sole of W's shoe. The man ran off. The boys stayed by the bridge of Sighs, waiting for their friend from Trinity, all a little spooked. They breathlessly related the encounter to T and C when they arrived. The theologian, C, managed to take them down, pointing out the metaphysical flaws in the man's story. W laughed off his outburst and bought the boys around at the pub. He chuckled nervously when he pulled 2 wadded-up pounds from his pocket. He always folded his bills neatly. C told him that he must have crumpled them up when pulling out the shilling. Then the real money rolled in. The factory of W's father hit a financial windfall. His student's stipendium doubled due to the whimsy of a don. And best of all, his ailing mother regained her health, the tuberculosis receding. My interviewee assured me that her great-grandmother passed away in 1931. W believed that the ring's curse was the real deal. He barely left the house after matriculation. He would never have to work again. His friends wanted in. He cautiously but happily sold it to R for 11 pence, who soon after inherited thousands from a deceased uncle. Feeling guilty, R tearfully sold it to T for 10 pence, who quickly found himself in a profitable career in a London advertising firm. The ring passed itself around and around in a circle of 5 friends. C was the last to join, his family's hard times leading to desperation. R also found himself unable to resist the temptation, buying it for a penny. By 1911, R and H exchanged the ring for a halfpenny, and on January 1st, 1912, W took the ring off of H for a farthing. His friends panicked at first. "Give it away to a drunkard or a prostitute," said one of the men. W smiled and handed T a 1902 half-farthing coin commemorating the coronation of King Edward VII. "God save the king," he said. "So, it's me then," said a wounded T. "I'm it?" W laughed and shook his head. "God save the Tsar," he said, handing R a Russian kopeck. And so it went. A cabal of Cambridge-educated businessmen played the currency exchange market, manipulating the European economy to keep the highs and the lows fluctuating. They could pass the ring forever, down family lines, and nobody would pay the price. Their power drove them away from each other. They never met after that New Year's Day, speaking to each other through letters and telegrams. H&T locked themselves up in keeps in the countryside. R surrounded himself with doctors and bodyguards and trained his nurses to spy on them and each other, turning his estate into a cross between a hospital and East Berlin. C stayed in a church for most of his waking hours, sure that it would protect him. W stayed marginally sane, writing economic essays and a biography of David Ricardo that never got published. Occasionally, leaving his house to return to Cambridge, he felt alive there, at King's associating with the apostles. On the campus for a lecture by, or was it about, Ellen Annette MacArthur, he found himself dangling the ring from its chain over the Bridge of Sighs, swaying as if entranced. "It would be so easy to let it go," he said to himself. "Of the ring?" said a voice behind him. "Oh no," said W. "Sorry, I was thinking of something." "You weren't thinking of offing yourself, were you?" said the boy. "No," said W. "Not like that." "Good," said the boy. "You look like a man with deeply ingrained expectations of personal safety." The young man spoke. The boy's first name was Thomas, and his last name was either Noon or Noun, a student of Anglo-Saxon and Norse studies from King's College. W had heard of him before. He had built a reputation for skills at English texts, speaking Old English like a native of that era. They spoke about the MacArthur lecture, with Noon getting on W's bad side with his politics. After agreeing on strikers and rioters and lazy men, Noon mentioned that he petitioned for proper Cambridge degrees for the steamboat ladies, while W was fond of Cambridge's traditions and saw no need for change. W changed the subject to a lecture by John Neville Keynes, father of the famous economist John Maynard Keynes. W's flawless recitation did not impress Noun, nor did his offer of high toast snuff. Wandering to a hall, Noon took the conversation in a more serious direction. "Will you be mother?" asked W. Thomas nodded and poured the tea. "Can I see it?" asked Thomas. "See what?" "Your magic ring," said Thomas. Stunned by the use of that phrase, W barely protested when the first-year student yanked the ring off his hand. It had never fit any of the boys right. Rather imbecilic supernatural paraphernalia, magic money rings, like the Anvaranat of the dwarfs, Loki toying with the greedy, or Halvor's ring, or the Nibelungans, if you wish to get Wagnerian. The ring of Elund the Fortunate, or maybe it's secretly the seal of Solomon and there's a cross demon inside, old voodoo cooked up by the Philistines, Thomas said, holding the ring to his ear and rolling it between his fingers. "It's hollow. Rather Venusian, I must say, even if it makes me sound like a Hun." "Beg your pardon?" W said. Oh, you know how the Germans go on about how their beloved culture, Kultur with a K, is essentially Greek. The German soul is not a Banausisch like the Englishman's, they say. They even say that they descended from the classical Greeks and that the modern Greeks aren't. What do you mean by Banausian? W said. It means blandly workmanlike. New money, he spat, albeit with good humor in his queer eyes. He returned to his trencherman's meal of 2 shepherd pies. You know, they used to make a kind of charm called a witch's bottle to ward off ghosts and ghoulies, right here in England just a few centuries back. This is something of that sort. One breaks the bottle in a fire, kills the witch, or scares off the demon. Might be something to look into. My family's made a name for itself through hard work, W said. My family made a name and stored it away for safekeepings. Now that's proper investing, Thomas said. Your family, W said. You're not a very well-known clan around here, for as old as you say you are. We don't have to be known, Thomas said. We were here before the orcs came. Who? The Normans, he said. It's a word for giants or demons or evil foreigners, no relation to the killer whales or Orcus, the Roman god of the underworld who hunted oathbreakers. Oathbreakers, W said. Yes, warlocks, he said. People who turn on their friends for power, those who deal with dark forces for the sake of a bit of money. Thomas spun the ring violently and hissed, Heldafol. He then said a word that chilled W. Demonology. He said it sounded more interesting than it actually was. Since the Bible rarely names demons, much of it must be invented, mostly to fill a chart. Demonological taxonomy tends to run along the lines of classification according to sins that they embody, the saints that they attack, the months at which their power is at its zenith, associations with pagan deities and classical elements, geographical domains, and various flavors. How one goes about researching the subjects is another matter. Do you interview people? What's your hypothesis? Do you write a paper defending it? Do you develop theories? What's the control? Or, Thomas said, is it all a matter of personal revelation? Who, pray tell, can you go to for answers? W said he decided to let the little bastard keep it, walked to his hotel room and collapsed, muffling his laughter with a pillow. The next day he woke up in a panic. He took a coach to the college and searched for Thomas Noun. When he found Thomas in the hall, he demanded the ring back. Thomas simply asked if he knew Aladdin's story. It wasn't the lamp, but the ring. Maybe you have a genie, and this will all blow over. W pleaded with Thomas, falling to his knees. Don't worry, Thomas said. I know. How? W asked. How could you? I know things, he said. You shouldn't live your whole life in fear of this little thing. You'll go to hell. You'll never be able to sell it, W said. I can't go to hell, said Thomas, with a knowing smile on his face. How can you say that? W demanded. Please, this isn't a prank. I know, said Thomas. I have family connections. Heaven and hell have no claim to my race. My only fear is my children going to the other place. The other place? Oxford, Thomas said. He shocked passers-by, stomping the ring flat underfoot. W scooped up the flattened ring. But it can't be destroyed, he whimpered. But I did, Thomas said. I think it was a mere tin. Look at how it breaks. The man said, W started. Did you ever try destroying it before? Thomas asked. No, it never occurred to me. Because you're mad, Thomas said. It wasn't only me, W said. I have friends. Friends go crazy too. Whole countries do sometimes. If the individual can fall to madness, so can a civilization. What? So can a group of friends. The diseases of society are as real as dementia. What if you and your mates drove each other mad? We weren't insane, W said. We were all there. It worked for us. If anything, it worked too well. Quem des perdir bolt. Dementat prius. I'm not mad, W snapped. It's fine. You simply lack the proper sense of scale. Your scale's off. You confuse the giants with the little people and the little people with windmills. I'm not mad, W protested, this time more calmly. It worked. No, you're not a madman. You're a josser and a chancer, and yet you fancied yourself a giant. You held in your hand the fly kings of Araby's rubbish and called yourself Zeus. And who do you think you are? W asked. We live in secret places, where a hunted stag would rather lay itself at mercy of a hungry hounds than enter. Do not attempt to follow or find me, said Tom Noun, icy and collected. He stood up and left. And then? I asked. My grandfather did not follow the strange boy, she said. He settled down, joined the civil service during the war, and dealt with terms of credit between the Allies. What about the other men in the original Cambridge Five? I asked. They probably turned out fine. They would have, even without the ring. That's what they never could wrap their heads around. The ring didn't do anything. They all were born lucky. Granddad realized that during the war. Only H went to Europe, and he never saw fighting. But they could never quite assure themselves that their money games didn't make things a little less stable before it all started. It ate at them, or Granddad at least, and he thought about Noun a lot. He claimed that the boy, dressed like a soldier from the war, haunts the grounds of the George Hotel in Amesbury, Wiltshire, accompanied by the sound of 4 horses running. He said that you can see Noun walking toward Stonehenge with a smile on his face. He wasn't right toward the end. He was a grumpy old geezer, really, despite all of the charities. But whenever someone called him out, he'd just mutter, "Count no man happy till he dies," and walk away. W's tomb bore the epitaph, Peithin vorai ke theos logos. It was from Euripides' Medea, line 964. It is said that even gifts persuade the gods.